Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to Deep Thoughts. Today's going to be about growing up. And someone made the mention of doing this, and it has been so long since I read the comment. I don't remember who said it, but if you made the suggestion, you know who you are. If I find it, I'll put it in the comments or something. Growing up. So it's going to be kind of a two-parter. Half this is going to be trying to help people who are trying to figure out how to grow up. I know it sounds ridiculous to some folks. Well, I am growing up. I'm over this age. But the real catalyst that made me just grab the mic and do this, 4th of July just happened here in the United States, 2016. And some friends of mine post pictures of their kids. And I see this one sort of picture and I see this one sort of thing at parties. And it infuriates me. The formula goes like this. Mommy or daddy has a problem. More often than not, it's the mommy in these particular scenarios because it's about the kids, right? But mommy eats too much. Mommy drinks too much. Mommy does this, does that. And the only reason why I kind of walk away from the guy thing is the guys are usually out working and just so fucking tired they don't have anything left. But the friend of mine, I've known her for over 10 years. She had a kid. She posted her kid pushing a shopping cart at some Bevmo. Kid's maybe 4, 5 tops. Pushing a gigantic... Well, sorry, I shouldn't say that. They got the kiddie cart and filled it full of booze. So it's packed full of booze. And this little kid has got the biggest smile on her face. And mommy's like, oh, this is so cute. Let me take a picture of you with a shit ton of alcohol. And let me make your endorphins flow. And me make your dopamine flow. And let's charge that dopamine up too. You're doing something right in the world. You're making mommy so happy. Helping me buy a ton of booze. Now, I'm going to give you the Paul Harvey on this particular picture because I think it applies here. Mommy's very left-brain conservative. Mommy had the hots for your host right here. I had the hots for her. She was cool. But she had already gone down the path of a different guy. He's a nice guy, but he's very left-brain as well. Didn't really... treat her that well, but didn't abuse her or anything, but just ignored the shit out of her. And it was either his way or the highway most of the time. Sweet guy. Really nice guy. But mommy didn't want to end up with that guy. But she didn't have the balls to tell her family, her friends, that she didn't want that guy anymore. And they'd already spent 4 years together, so it was just fucking foregone conclusion. So mommy marries the other dude. Has a beautiful child. Oh my God, just appearance-wise, just a gorgeous kid. I've never met the kid. And, but now, a girl who never really drank that much is drinking like she's got issues. And when you do something you know you're not supposed to do, whether or not it be just a minor personal issue or a gigantic problem like alcoholism, you don't want to believe that you're fucked up. And so you drag everyone down with you. Like I said in my alcoholism episode, I've dated 2 people in the last year and a half, both of which were alcoholics. One is a closet alcoholic and one is very professional about it and just admits it. I called off the relationship in one and sort of really pushed the other one to either change or let me go. 2 great people. 2 great people. Alcoholism became their symbolism of growing up. And this little girl pushing the shopping cart, I'm going to tell you right now, if mommy hasn't dealt with their alcoholism by the time this girl is 15 years old, you better believe she's going to be down the same path. Maybe even worse, because the kid was started from birth. Imprinting on her that being an adult means we drink. And believe me, I've seen all the fucking brochures and beer commercials telling you that you're right and I'm wrong. Right? But this example, for me, goes one step further because I've seen it before. A friend of mine has a family. Mommy just grew completely, I don't know, discontent with life. I don't know what the fuck the problem was. But I go over there and there's a party and there's about an 12-year-old girl, and she's sitting at the island in the kitchen. And I think I'm just about to leave, and I'm looking over, and these women are yelling and screaming, like happy. And I look over, and it's a little girl mixing adult drinks at a bar for all the women. And every single time she mixes one right, they scream and they yell. And the little girl's face was like, it was like a face that said, oh, this is good. This is good that I'm doing this, right? She became an alcoholic. She got really, really confused. The kid's fine today, but no help to fucking mommy, or no help by mommy, right? Kid tried to hurt herself a couple times. And I walked out of that place with my buddy. We got to my car and I said, your kid, what's up with this mix and drink bullshit at 11 years old or however old she is? You know that's going to fuck her up, right? Oh, my wife's an idiot, blah, 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 blah. So, didn't want to deal with the wife's bullshit. Kid went off and paid the price, basically. Kid's fine today, but God damn it, she paid the price. She paid some big prices. All temporary, thank God. So growing up, it's the one thing we don't do anymore, right? Very few people are grown up anymore. But it's obviously some sort of subjective thing, I guess. Where I come from, it's not very subjective. Where I come from, it means you're responsible. And just saying you're responsible means a ton of other words that are fantastic. You're accountable. You tell the truth, right? You take your shirt off for someone else in need. You realize that even though we are supposed to make sure that as individuals we become individual, amazing people, that we do also acknowledge the fact that we all live together. And if someone else comes over and tells you what to do specifically, you better know who they are, you better agree with what they're saying, and you better have thought about it. Really constructed a thought in your mind, and not just regurgitated something. Or felt insecure that you didn't know something and so you went along with it, right? Now, I have a distinct advantage over some people. For whatever reason, and I don't know why, I have never felt for peer pressure in my life. Because I was usually the dude at the tip of the spear of anything that was, hey, let's do this, let's do that. All the buddies I ever hung out with, I was at the tip of the spear. And if someone else wanted to do something different, I'd look at it and say, is that what I want to do? Okay, yeah. If not, all right, dude, see you later. So I never really struggled with drugs. I shouldn't even say it that way. I never struggled with drugs. Never was a big drinker. No, what's nice is I can drink a beer here and there and enjoy it. So growing up gets pretty screwed up if you fall for the pressures of other people. What we're going to say on this show is screw those other people. Screw them. Someone else trying to get you to do something that they're doing is usually, well, I shouldn't say it. Sometimes they're doing something nice. They just want you to get off your ass and go out. And I've had that happen too, where someone suggests something to me and I'm kind of ornery about it and I go do it and I love it. Going to Hawaii was one of them, right? Meeting my high school sweetheart by getting dragged out of my house to go and go down to the city pool. Those kind of things are not what we're talking about here. We're talking about, you know, that what they're trying to get you to do is wrong. And they're simply trying to get more people on board with wrong. So somehow it makes a right. So screw those people. I mean, we can wish well onto them and help them. But right now, we got to grow up as an entire society. And I don't even know the rest of the world. I couldn't comment about a single area of the world besides the United States of America. Now, obviously, if you're on this channel, there's a high likelihood that you are extremely responsible, and I'm not talking to you, you know? But if you have to engage in this sort of thing, and if you have to see this kind of stuff, I'm hoping that I'm just preaching to the choir, but I'm also giving you, hopefully, perspectives and words that you might be able to refine better than I do, of course, and apply it to people around you. And if you're in a marriage and you have someone on the other side of the fence causing problems for your kids, trying to drag them into it, that you can notice it first and foremost and gently and productively stop it. But like I said at the beginning, it's going to be for two groups, right? For those of you raising other people and trying to give them a beacon of being grown up, and then for yourself to figure out, are you growing up well? Now, technically speaking, we all know that even if you live to be 100 years old, you're always maturing and you're always becoming more intelligent. You're never who you were 10 years ago at a minimum. And so this isn't going to be some absolute, but I do believe that there's a point, without losing your mind, of course, that you have crossed over the Rubicon of growing up. And it doesn't matter how old you are at all. You know, miracles can happen. Kids can be 14 years old, and they are just sophisticated souls that understand. Sure, they're immature in various capacities because they haven't experienced certain things before. They're going to have their mind blown by little things because they haven't seen them before, but they're going to accelerate and do well. For others, you meant well, you were accountable, but for whatever reason you got caught up in addictions, you got caught up in methodologies, marketing, and it just took you a long time, and you found out, well, damn, I'm 45 and I just feel like I just grew up. Nothing wrong with that either, right? As long as you can say you crossed over it. So how do we start quantifying and putting some definite milestones in this process of growing up? How's that possible? Well, the real debate in America goes like this. Some of us raise our kids from the second they're born. And we give them little pushes and directions, right? Where we say, oh, no, we don't do that. Oh, we do this. How about this? Oh, we don't do that, And it's not a big no fest. It's just a little bit of blinders on the horse, right? Just keep them guided in the right direction. But other parents have philosophies where they say, well, I don't know how to raise a kid, so I'm just going to let the kid do whatever they want. And the second they become a gigantic pain in the ass and a total embarrassment, I'm going to try to swoop in and fix them. And that leaves a child completely and utterly confused. And usually hating their parents. Because the parents don't make any sense to them. My big question that I have, personally, is whether or not being undisciplined can ever be truly reversed at a decent pace. I think genetics plays a huge role in the equation. And this is what I've seen genetically speaking. A really young family having a lot of kids, which is nothing wrong with that at all, typically have your more chaotic kids. One, because mommy and daddy haven't grown up themselves, and so they have no disciplinary book. But, some young kids are raised in great families, and they do carry with them mechanisms to help kids be mature, right? But what I have noticed in my own close friends is that some of the more mature friends I have, and this is by no means the rule, but it's often, their parents were older, having given birth to them in their 30s. And they just seem to be more collected and relaxed and calm with the world than those of us who had to go through a lot of trials and tribulations to get there. Now, I was raised by fairly young parents. I think my mom was 21, my dad was 23. But the world was a little bit more sophisticated back in those days. My mom was in a pretty large family, so she had really been exposed to how to at least mechanically make sure a child has what a child needs, My dad just loved kids, and so it was great, the two of them working together. But I had grandmothers that were profound in my life that really just talked to me like I was smart. I had, like I've talked about a couple times, I had an uncle that talked to me like I was his age. And so that really, really helped me just kind of figure things out. But I also was a weird child. I mean, I felt like I was much older when I was really young. And I couldn't stand daycare. I just couldn't stand it. I mean, I liked hanging out, but it was like, leave me alone. Or you want to hang out with me, let's chill and talk about what our favorite colors are, baby. But, don't make me sing London Bridges, man. I don't have anything to do with that shit. But I also had a tremendous amount of freedom because I grew up in the 70s where parents and governments didn't get involved with how you raise your kids, right? I mean, the parents would just let you stay home. You would go to school and come home and you just let yourself in the house, or you just go out and chill out when it's summertime. Your parents get up and leave, and they leave you at the house, and you're fine, right? Every single kid, besides, maybe like 1 in 4 kids had a mother that stayed home. But it wasn't like we had to report in or any of that kind of crap. We just did whatever the hell we wanted to. And we survived. But we also didn't have the internet to pull and prod our brains. We actually had, each other to just tell bullshit stories to. It's funny when every once in a while, I will remember stories that I either was told as a kid or embellished or something. I don't know if I can remember any offhand, but there was a lot of scary stories when I was a kid. Yeah. And so I'll tell you one that we passed on, and one that I can't remember. I feel like it really happened, but it most likely couldn't have happened, right? There's a lot of stories about kids being left at home, and the phone rings, and people saying, are your parents there? Your parents there? And they keep saying no, because we're stupid. And there was just a collection. There's one story that kept getting told over and over again, which is it was sort of just your Halloween movie, 1979 formula, where there's 3 or 4 kids at a house, and the phone keeps ringing, and for whatever reason, one of the kids goes to the neighbor to try to say, we need your help, instead of calling 911. And by the time they come back over the house, everyone's slaughtered and hung up, like some miraculous fast death, and everyone's just dead, and they're all hung up, by ropes or whatever. And this was sort of the ghost story we used to tell. And there's a million versions of that story of how they got all confused, but it always ends with all of them dead but one, which is Halloween. And I remember we're telling this story and telling a bunch of stories at some house. It's sort of raining outside, middle of the Kansas, countryside. And the fake story was that someone said, someone looked out the window of the door and screamed. One of the girls screamed. And we all went out the window, and I swear to God, someone in a trench coat was up against the lamppost that was kind of a classic London lamppost that someone had put in front of their house in the middle of Kansas. And I think I saw it, but then I don't remember if it was really me seeing it or these kids saying that they saw it, right? But it's just funny how there's phases of our lives where we actually carry this kind of crap for. We invent it just out of sheer entertainment or whatever, trying to be special. Oh, I saw this, right? Or you have a really vivid dream when you're a kid, and then 5 years later you think you actually experienced it. Seeing UFOs is something I used to dream, but I don't think I've really ever seen one. So how do you know you've crossed over and become grown up? It's going to start from the perspective of what your requirements are as a human being. Some of you are going to be single your whole life because that's your choice. Some of you are going to be single for a long time, and you're going to have kids, maybe 30, 40 years old. And some of you are going to get started before you graduate high school, either by sheer mistake or out of total love. And it's nothing there's nothing just de facto wrong or right about any of these formulas. It's just what happens. Just be responsible, and it won't matter at all, right? So your requirements are going to be different constantly. Now, I'm going to say that one of the easy, low-hanging fruit things that you'll hear is that being responsible in a functional sense has almost purely to do with you getting out of your parents' house and going and getting a job and paying for your bills. No judgment based on whatever job you get. I mean, it doesn't matter what you do, as long as you can pay your bills and obviously have a little bit of scrap left over and you get a little happiness out of that, then you've done what you need to do. Sure, you can make more money, but as long as you get the basics taken care of, you're doing what you need to do. Now, if this was 1979 and America was like it was back when Donald Trump was getting his career started, that'd be a very easy thing for me to tell you, and I could walk away from this mic. I could literally just drop the mic like Eric B. and Rakim, and I would say, I've given the only piece of advice that people need to hear. But we know the world's different than that now, right? We've accepted a boom and bust cycle, which is the bankers of Europe that try to keep us from ever amassing any wealth so that we can't come after them. So it's a little bit tougher to just flippantly do this. And I want to give you that functional example of growing up because there's more to it than just the functional example of growing up. You could be broke as a joke and be grown up. But no one ever says that, right? Being accountable, I think, is the magic word. What does that mean? Well, life is sort of divided up into two major hemispheres, if not more. But the two major hemispheres are the utilitarian responsibility that you have to do things like make money, pay rent, shelter, food, take care of your kids, that kind of thing. And then you live in the right brain side of the world, which is emotions. And that's tricky. That's super tricky. And the tricky part about it is very multidimensional. Some of you are going to live in worlds where your emotional spectrum is very tight, meaning you don't experience that many emotions because your parents, perhaps, or the world that you live in doesn't get emotional. Could be a cultural thing. No one hugs each other. No one says, I love you. And you've just grown up that way your whole life, and so you don't need it, technically speaking, and you don't know it's there. And then some of you are going to grow up in a world where it is utter and complete bombardment constantly of high-maintenance parents, brothers, sisters, friends, spouses, whatever, and it just seems like it's never going to stop. And so you're trying to thread a needle in a windstorm, in a hurricane, a wet hurricane. And so someone is sitting here on a show on YouTube saying, be accountable, be accountable, be accountable. And you're just looking at me like, shut up. You have no idea the pressures that I'm going through right now. I am an accountable person. But the sheer amount of stuff that's trying to push through my machine, which is my consciousness, my mind, and my body, is simply too much. So let's go after the functional one first, because it's going to be a little easier. I'm not saying it's easy. I'm just saying it's easier. Now, I could be full of shit with what I'm about to say, but I'll say this. From my perspective, the new up-and-coming men of the world seem to be unanimously lacking, for the majority of them, this sense of accountability that I was taught as a kid without a word being spoken directly towards this end, which is life can get very hard and brutal, but just like lifting weights and making yourself exhausted by lifting weights, you will get the adrenaline rush of having lifted weights. And life, even though it's tough, provides for you sort of the algorithm and theme in the movie Unbreakable with Bruce Willis. He never found out how strong he was until he was challenged and something or someone was trying to break him, and he was always assured to survive the challenge because he's unbreakable. And that's every man on planet Earth. You can do it. You just got to step up to the plate and try. It doesn't mean you're going to succeed every single time. In fact, you might get bitch slapped right to the ground within a split second. But what a man does is get up and do it again and do it again. And guess what? No one is there to cheer you on. If you have anybody that's there to cheer you on, you're pretty damn lucky. What I like to tell people is the following, at least the men. Now, men, we are to take care of our women. We are to provide that warm, cozy feeling, or at least shelter for a woman so she may build a womb within that shelter. If where I come from, that's the man's responsibility. But what I like to tell guys when it comes to growing up is that no one really gives a shit whether or not you live or die. That person doesn't exist. At the same time, there's no one in the world that cares how many girls you've slept with. And there's no one that you should care about, I should say, that cares about how many beers you can drink, how much booze you can consume. No one really exists who cares about any of that shit. So if you're trying to go around counting your beers, you got a little black book in your phone, how many chicks you banged or whatever, you have driven a stake in the ground of immaturity, of childhood, pre-adolescent thinking, and it's time to clip it, leave it in the ground, get your rope, and move on. I used to say all the time, it's a hell of a thing being a man, because it's hard. If you really engage it, it's difficult. But at the same time, the amount of rewards and accolades that you will feel personally by yourself when you succeed is stunning. Most men have played a video game. Most kids have played a video game. I'd like to think that at least everyone at one point in their life, and of course I'm being stronger about being a male because that's what I am, right? I'm going to give you my impression of the female side of things, but I could definitely talk to you about from the male perspective. But you've played a video game and you've busted your ass to get something that was really, really hard. And you didn't cheat. There was no way to cheat. And you reached that point and you felt amazing. Well, being a man in this video game of life, it's just like that, man. It's just like that. When you succeed, and especially when you think you can't succeed, when you think you can't get up one more time, but you do. You sort of become a zombie sometimes when you really go through a tough spell in life. And it could be a tough emotional spell, or it could just be a tough utilitarian spell. You know, for those of you going to college, well, and you got to have a job too. Well, you know, it's a pain in the ass. You got to get up, got to go to work. Then you got to get off work. You got to rush your ass over to the college, take a class or two, come back home. If you got a family, you got to be a dad. You got to be a husband. That's something else, man. I mean, there should be a way for guys like me to send you, trophies at certain milestones to say, good job, man, good job. But there's no way for that to really occur, right? So you're going to have to do it completely and utterly by yourself. But once you succeed, once you start doing what you want to do for a living, boom. And you pass all that happiness to your spouse, to your kids. And boy, do they ever look up to you because you did the impossible. At that moment, you will feel what it's like to be a man. It is hard, and that's what makes it awesome. Negating or navigating around things that are hard in life, it almost utterly and completely ensures that you will be a slave to all kinds of things. I had a friend of mine. She had a sports scholarship. The coaches told their players, Go get a psychology degree if you're not very good at school, because it's super duper easy to get that degree. So she did. She went off and got that degree. Hey, you think, well, I mean, she got a degree. That's pretty awesome, right? You should talk to her today. Total slave mentality. Total slave mentality. Unbelievable. Works in just a slave shop. Trying to escape, and she'll call me up and give me all these ideas about how she's going to escape the system, and it's just more slave talk. But she's tenacious as hell. She actually has the capability of escaping, but she just can't get her mind straight because she cheated when she was young. She cheated getting a degree in anything that interests her. So now she's sort of got the degree, but it doesn't matter to her. It doesn't feed into anything that she really enjoys in life. And that's why it doesn't work. It would have been better to not get a degree and spend that time doing something else. Now, it's going to be tough for anyone to hang on for me talking about being a female, because to my knowledge, I've never been one. You know, the main difference between a male and a female, this whole Venus-Mars thing, is that men are supposed to be the protectors and the hunters. There's only a few exceptions in society that I know of where women went out and hunted. But men have upper body strength for a reason. We are to protect. We're to build things. It was either created that way by God, an alien, or it's just the filtering of evolution. Now, evolution-wise, it doesn't make any sense to me because we should probably both be almost identical. But it's not the case. It is simply not the case, as much as people will give you the line of bullshit that we're exactly equal in the exact same ways. No, we're not. We're equal in totally different ways. But a woman is the only one of the two of us that can have a child. A male has to have sex with a female. It's the way we're designed. As much as they're trying to cloud that sensibility as well. But the female carries a child for 9 months, right? And the child is born. And she is the only one that lactates between the two. So she has the utter and profound, unequivocal responsibility of raising a child. Now, I've just named a few physical, utilitarian things that a woman's body does to create life. But just like I mentioned, if any of you have taken psychology in college and you had the same thing, I took it twice and I had the same exact example told to me twice. There was an experiment somewhere in the 50s or early 60s where they took a maternity ward, all these little kids, all these little babies, and they didn't hug them. Just as a weird experiment. I don't know if they asked the family members if they could do this, but what ended up happening was the baby started to die, like dominoes. Just SIDS, boom, all of them going. And everyone rushed in, and once 2 or 3 of them started passing, they all rushed in, tried to hug these kids back to life, but most of them left. Because when they were born, they were putting in this plastic fucking container in a room, because it would have been too burdensome for mom to take care of her kid, which any woman would argue with that. But what does the Rockefeller Foundation hospitals do? They steal your baby from you from the second it's born. Oh, you get a little bit of tit-sucking time, and then boom, you got to go off in some other room, and then everyone looks at you through plate glass windows. Unbelievable. Oh, yeah, someone comes up and hugs your kid. Not you. So the bonding between you and your kid is just severed, right? Well, the reason why I mention that is that there's a huge emotional halo around a female. And when a female's pregnant or has a newborn around her or a child of any kind, and she's engaged in it, she is glowing for real. Her entire energy frequency glows, which is why we say pregnant women glow. I can see it. I don't see it as a light emission from her body, but I see it, I feel it in a spiritual way. I look at a woman's eyes who's pregnant, and I just see that glow. And I've seen it in women who weren't exactly happy to be pregnant too. When life is created in a woman, it is very, very special. So now think about it. Men, we get up and hunt, we build, we do all this left brain stuff. Men are typically the inventors of the world. It's weird, right? What's the old saying? A woman's place is barefoot and pregnant in the kitchen. Okay, who invented all the ovens, all the pots and pans? Like 98% of it's all created by men, so why aren't men the one in there cooking? It's really weird. Here, woman, I made a machine for you. Cook. A woman has to deal with the right brain. A woman has to deal with an absolute chaotic cloud of events related to childbirth in most cases. And even if a woman does not have a child, she still has the power to have a child. Even past menopause, mentally speaking, grandmothers are fantastic, warm, fuzzy, amazing women, amazing beings, I should say. And grandfathers are too. Grandfathers get nice and right brain as they get older, I think. But what has society done to this whole equation? Because marketing divisions of companies know that women are extremely emotional, that there's just a physical quality required to raise a child. What they have done is tapped into that emotional chaos, which actually starts out fairly orderly, woman's focus is essentially finding a mate, getting pregnant, and having children. And then taking care of the ecosystem of that, grandchildren, more children, whatever. But a woman is way more susceptible to emotions than a man in most cases. But obviously we are really screwing with the gender roles in this world. And I think that the depopulation crew of the ruling class know exactly what's going on. And there's very simple maneuvers that they're going to be affecting the way that we perceive ourselves by essentially portraying the sexes as opposite of what they are. And when a small child is trying to figure out what side of the fence they're going to land on, it can get confusing. Now I'm going to jump into a bit of conspiracy here for a split second. You got to hang on with me here. For those of you who've seen Bug's Life, you understand the idea of the few ruling the many, right? In Bug's Life, the families of the ants were actually very nucleus, right? I mean, it was nuclear, I should say, excuse me. You had a mother, father, and the kids, and a bunch of them. Now, in real life, you've got the brood, but they have done everything in their power to make sure that a family unit breaks up. By one, creating a two-income household in the 70s, which essentially mandates that the mother has to go out and earn money, otherwise you can't keep your shelter. If you're in a situation where you can stay home and raise your kids, then you're extremely privileged. And you've done something right, either by sheer luck or by intent. But the kids get thrown in daycare centers. They get indoctrinated quickly in preschools. I think kids start school perceivably too early, by at least 1 year. It just depends. Every kid's different. Every family's different. But right now, if you're in a first world country, I can't speak to any third world countries, you are, as a woman, you are wooed away from very clear priorities in life. I grew up in a very small town, and in that small town formula, I watched mothers all work the same with their daughters. And some of it got a little obsessive, but in most healthy cases, you had a father prepping his son with everything I just said in this video. I mean, I almost gave you verbatim what I heard as a young man towards becoming a man. And then in the female side of things, it was, maintaining some civility in your definition of being a woman. There was acting proper. You were typically encouraged to act more proper than the men. And then that was going to be your lifelong subtextual plot, which is to get your man to behave, sort of a tongue-in-cheek reference. But if anyone swore in the family, it was always the male, not the female, and the female would go, hey, let's not talk that way around the kids. But you simply found your mate around 18 years old, say 1950 and below, it'd be usually a couple where the daughter's 18 and the husband's anywhere between 18 and 20. It's usually a 2-year gap between the two of them. Both my sets of grandparents, one of them is 10 years older than the other. My father's parents were born in 1910 and 1912. And my other grandparents were born in 1920 and 1922. 10 years apart. But they were 2 years apart within the couple. Now, can you imagine today? I've got a kid in her 20s. I can't imagine her being married right now. Because society isn't rigged like that anymore. Society's not as easy as it used to be back in the day. So we have to modify for whatever we're doing here. But what happens right now, and I'm going to go back to the males and give you the male section. I'm not going to just pick on women or anything. But the female is made to feel inadequate extremely quick. The food supply in this country is absolutely atrocious. So a lot of people are gaining a lot of weight. They actually damage their organs by eating GMOs and all kinds of sugar sweeteners and, fake sweeteners and stuff. And so physically speaking, it's hard for a woman to hang on to the way she looks. Her metabolism's usually shot because her thyroid's been attacked by a bunch of toxins. It's just hard. And then they put these images up to say this is what's perfect and you're not that. So feel inadequate. Oh, and by the way, if you just go to this plastic surgeon and get your hair cut a certain way and wear this makeup a certain way, you can at least get as close as you're going to get to these random people that we picked and told you were perfect. You got to see the Twilight Zone where the girl is supposed to pick a number and replace what her body looks like. I mentioned that one of my episodes, I think, in the first season. A woman is also supposed to continue dating until she gets married. So if a girl goes on her first date at 13 years old, she will typically not have a breather of dating someone else or being with someone else until the day she dies. And if she finds herself single, oh my gosh, it is the end of the world. And it doesn't matter what age you are, because that's how you're raised. You have failed if you ever remain by yourself. As I mentioned several times on the show, women are taught that the rat race that men are trying to get out of is the rat race that you desperately want to get into and need to get into in order to prove to yourself you're a grown-up, that you're somebody. I got one grandmother that stayed home her whole life, but was very active in the hometown and always had a project, always helped rebuild our town, got into initiatives, ran bridge parties and that kind of stuff, was never sitting on her hands. And my other grandmother, who's 10 years older, worked her entire life from the age of 17 and up, was a teacher for 36 years, and raised 2 boys, and was always involved as an older person as well. So there was never any shortage of women working. It was in phases. You get your kids out when you're nice and young, raise them up, then you go join the workforce. And you become more, I think, enlightened than a male because you actually had both hemispheres of education. And a man just goes to work and comes home and does the family thing every night. But he can offload a lot of that family responsibility on the female that stays home back in the day. But right now, society tries to teach you that your kids aren't your priority, that you're your priority. Even your spouse isn't your priority. And it's tough to sort it all out on a daily basis, right? I also look at males. I can tell you that, just watching sports and beer commercials, I can tell you that males are so easily duped. Anytime I'm mentoring a young girl, I always try to tell them, look, the guys are not as mature as you are. So you got to make sure you understand that when you start to fall in love with them. And I think it's true. Regardless of what sex you are, you need to understand that no one should own the opinion of you but you. And that might sound like counterintuitive to what I'm saying here, but it will give you more control in the end, right? If you're a woman, you shouldn't allow a man to tell you whether or not you're beautiful or intelligent. Either you know you are, you aren't. And if you aren't, it's really no one else's business on planet Earth, and you know how to take steps today to become as enlightened as you want to be. YouTube alone, all right? If there's any area of life you want to be enlightened, And yes, there's a lot of fodder out there that's crap, but if you want to be enlightened about anything, just something technical, something spiritual, male or female, you can watch YouTube videos for days and days and days, and you will just see the world differently. You will see so many things that can't be unseen, right? So if you find yourself in need, well, hey man, you picked a really good era to have that problem. Because when I was a kid, if you happen to run into that problem, well, geez, you have to find a wise old Obi-Wan Kenobi in the town you lived in and go have a conversation. Or, some female columnist in the newspaper, if you're a female, right? But men are easily duped away from priorities as well. Men also, and I mentioned this a couple times, men, you have to understand we are built to kill something every single day. An animal, so we can eat. Maybe if the tribe gets smart, they kill several things on a Monday, and then we eat for 3 or 4 days, a week, whatever. The Native Americans were good at making beef jerky, right? So they can make it last a lot longer. So that aggression in some men is very close to the surface. And it's just probably just the luck of the draw for the genetic role on a particular person, whether or not you're more in tune with your primal self or not. For some of us, it'll never manifest in a violent way, but it'll manifest in an emotional way. And so, I think we all have this, but I know that males do this too, where, especially when I was younger, I would allow a bad situation to go for weeks, months, years, and then someone, it would just kind of like one straw would get on there and break the camel's back, and then I would argue or yell at the person doing it. In some rare cases, you cross wires, so it's like cause over here A, and you're yelling at person B. That's pretty damn rare, but it happens. We blow up. Which is why I finally started saying I got to get myself centered. That's where I came up with really the philosophy of self-family work. Because in that priority order, you've got to get yourself in check, and then you'll just effortlessly grab the other two hemispheres. But you got to have, at minimum, 2 of the 3 working well. And it may seem like I'm going very abstract about all this kind of stuff, but what I'm trying to do is give you a ton of areas to focus on. And the more that you can focus on these areas and get them either affirmed that they are exactly the way we're talking about, or even better, then you can just put that to bed. And then if I say anything that identifies an area that you're like, oh yeah, that's something I need to work on, or I've never heard that opinion before, interesting, then you can laser in on that area and put more, effort into seeing how maybe you can improve that for yourself, right? What I would love to do, or love to be able to do, is to point you at some people that I think acted grown up. But everyone has flaws, right? And then I don't know certain people, so I don't know if I'm giving you good advice or bad advice, right? With the internet, there's so many accusations going around about every human being on planet Earth, some of which we can confirm they're running for president, and others that you just don't know. That it's hard. I might mention a name, and then 2 weeks after I air the episode, that person gets pulled up on some horrible charges, and I look like an idiot. So I'm not going to mention anyone. I am assuming that in your life, you have people that you can point to that make you feel very secure, that are always your rock. That no matter how emotionally unstable you might get at any one point in time, and it may be just once every 10 years you run into that sort of swing that alarms you, you go to them, they're a rock, and it always calms you down. Now let's loop back to the beginning. I told you about a little girl pushing a cart of alcohol. And, to give you a perspective of what I'm talking about here, it must have been 12 bottles of wine, and at least 6 other mini alcoholic things, hard liquor and stuff, in this child cart, right? Bevmo, you can't walk into a Bevmo is short for beverages and more here in America. You can't walk in unless you have an adult with you, because you're essentially in a place that sells a ton of alcohol. Now, you can buy chips and dip and cigars and all kinds of other stuff there, but you're not allowed in unless you're of age. So the idea that this place, and I don't even know if that's where they were, but the idea that any place with a ton of booze has got, The mixed metaphor of, here's a child cart and it should have booze in it. It's just fucking weird, right? The number one thing that is sort of low-hanging fruit and sort of lowbrow for this audience, because I always think you guys are way beyond a lot of this childish crap I'm talking about. But again, maybe I'm just talking to you so you can watch it in other areas of your personal life, right? We don't necessarily need to go to the grocery store and watch people do what my friend does. But probably one of the easiest rules you could apply to your life is the last place on earth that you're going to get guidance for how to grow up is in any commercial on television, in any cultural pastime unrelated to the emotional stability of being a human being. There are traditions around the world that are sort of rite of passage rituals that are very interesting. And there was the one that's the wheel of cheese or something that rolls down a hill is one of them. I think Scotland and Ireland have really amazing physical exhibitions of men, moving logs, chopping logs, throwing logs, climbing up logs, all that kind of stuff. Those are the old rite of passages, man. Those were the yearly competitions between males to make sure that you didn't sit on your ass, to make sure that if someone tries to invade your land, it's like, oh, yeah, we can fight a war because you know what we do in our spare time? We throw 1-ton logs in the air. It's that's what those things were for. But when we moved to America, the thing is that we had some technology to keep those things from ever happening, like guns, and that's nice. But we didn't build any rite of passage in place besides joining the military, which is nothing wrong with that, to get us to be prepared for defending ourselves, right? And this isn't an episode about war or anything. But the female communities that I grew up in were very small. Very, very small, meaning the amount of people that you interacted with in your lifetime was not a tremendous amount of people, but they were very intimately involved with who you were as a person, and they always sort of knew, okay, Mary over there across the street had 4 daughters, and all of them are different. Well, these 2 are kind of almost the same, but the other 2 are really different. This one, she's a swimmer. She's a runner. She just wants to have kids. She's so good with kids. She helped me raise my kids, da-da-da, on and on down the line. And as they were to advise you from any split second in time or try to help you, they had an instinct about what the hell you wanted to do with your life, and they kind of kept you on track with your natural found loves, right? We've lost that. In a big, big way, we've lost it. The second that one person in this society gets isolated, well, it's turn on the TV because I'm lonely. Cruise the internet because I'm lonely. Look at Facebook feeds, blah, 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 blah. And the problem is all that misaligns you from your internal self because the inner voice that is your being isn't listened to at all anymore, right? A friend of mine just posted a very interesting 1-sentence post, and she said, why is it so difficult for people just to speak their mind? And it intrigued me. I was like, whoa, that's cool. Let's go and read. There's a bunch of comments in there. And I was so pleasantly surprised at every single comment that came into that thread because people were essentially saying, you could tell they didn't read each other's comments because they were paraphrasing each other. But everyone said, well, the ability to speak your mind is the ability to accept the truth, the ability to believe in yourself, the ability to accept reality. There's a whole bunch of different, I know these people, and they're all from different walks of life, and they were all right on the same page. And it was a nice moment in that realm because it didn't involve, hey, this celebrity died, look at me, I'm the first person to tell you, right? I don't know what the addiction is with people telling other people that somebody died. I mean, if it has a profound connection to you, I totally get it. A very sweet woman in my hometown passed away. She was 89 years old. She really touched some people in town, but I didn't know her. I'm not sure I ever recognized her in all my journeys in my little hometown. But she's definitely affected some friends of mine, I found out later on. But my dad just utterly obsessed on telling me this woman passed away, and I told him right off the bat, I have no idea who this woman is. And he kept sending me email after email after email about her. And I'm like, well, why don't you tell me? how a female PE teacher affected your life, Dad? Or are you just trying to, I don't know, trying to make me feel something? She's 89. She totally won the game of life, right? She lived a nice, long, amazing life and made a difference to people. And I absolutely have all the respect for that person, but I don't know her. It's really, really strange. Here's your non sequitur. So why do we care about growing up? Why do we care if anyone grows up? Most of you know, because you have to deal with everyone else in the world. We're looking at a world that is so easily duped, it's unbelievable. And if anyone would grow up, we would be furious with the way the world is run. And I think that it's happening. I think that, love it or hate it, whether or not it's manipulated or what have you, this British Brexit thing, let's hope it holds. People are getting tired of being lied to. But who can endure being lied to every single day? The person that lies to themselves every single day. AKA, or i.e., not growing up. And they can be duped into all kinds of unrelated things. And it's scary. So let's say that we're all grown up on this series. That everyone hearing my voice, especially an hour and plus into it, you feel like you're very centered. You know you're not perfect. Some of you know you're damn close. And let's think about it. We all grow up. We exhibit, by example, all the qualities of being responsible and accountable in life. And we're not afraid to fail in front of other people and pick ourselves back up and acknowledge perhaps even to other people, well, I kind of screwed that one up, but watch me get it right. Sit back and relax and watch me get it right, or watch me continue to try. Starting a family is one way that you will make you and your spouse grow up in an amazing way. While you've got little kids that aren't growing up at all, unequivocally involved with your life on every split second. You got to wipe their butts until they're at least 4 or 5 years old, right? You start to see the difference between being grown up and not being grown up. But the other one that a man can get into and a woman can get into, usually depending on how and when you want to have your families, these delay. I apologize if I sound like I'm marginalizing women at all in this video. It's not my intent and not my feeling inside. But entrepreneurship is more often engaged by a male due to the way that we have the cycle of life and creating kids and all that stuff. It's not through any lack of ability on the female side. But once you create your own business, depending on how hard that is, you'll do a lot of growing up really, really fast because you'll make a ton of mistakes. And your first one, depending on how much money you can make from it, it's either a great experience or it's kind of like, God, this was really tough, and I don't know if I really liked the experience, right? But the cool thing is when you do your second one, to the degree you can avoid mistakes you made in your first one, and you'll assuredly make new mistakes you never made before because the challenges will be slightly different, you will feel the growing up part of it all. And it doesn't have to be a big business with lots of employees. It could just be you doing something that you love on the side that is hopefully it makes money for you eventually. But even if your first attempt doesn't make money, doesn't matter. If you're ebbing closer and closer and closer, then you're succeeding, right? But what I find is, this is just a little example, and then I'll try to wind this thing down. When you work for yourself, you'll typically go through this phase in your lifetime. I've had this a couple times in my life. You will, work for the man for a certain amount of time to get your skill sets up, get some money in the bank, and then hopefully you can continue working for the man and start your business on the side. Get your clientele up until you can take your income from the new business and replace whatever you do for a living, right? It's usually how you get your first one started. And it took me probably 2 or 3 tries to really walk away from my employer and start my own business. Now, what ends up happening is that you start to see, when you hang out with your friends, the slave mentality. And I hate to say it so strongly, but you will definitely see this. I go to work, I do 8 hours a day or whatever, and I come home. And what's interesting is they'll typically have more stuff than you do, right? And what does the world say you need to be happy? Stuff, right? And so you will envy at times the regularity and lack of stress that working for a corporation will give you. And really, if you love what you do within that corporation, fine, dig it. I got plenty of buddies of mine who smoke $35 cigars every freaking day, and maybe two, and they work for the man. They have to travel constantly. They pay prices for doing that, and they love it. In the end, they love it. The byproduct, the subtotal, grand total, they dig, right? But then I'll undoubtedly have the conversation when one of my ventures starts taking off, and they'll say, well, what do you do for a living, man? Or how's it going? What business are you in today, right? And I'll tell them, and it seems very fanciful, and it is definitely, the stuff I work in is super duper exciting. It just really is. But it's also got major requirements, major late hours half the time, lots of driving, lots of meetings, lots of all kinds of stuff. Okay. But then my income is very surgy, right? So I get like a ton of cash, and then I have to hang on to it. Ton of cash and hang on to it. And depending on if I can make one stretch out for 10 years, like my last company was 10 years, I get a lot of benefits from that. But what I've noticed in now doing this for probably the majority of the last 20 years of my life is that those hardships, all those things that I would, if I could have written the book of life, if someone said, okay, 20 years ago, you can go back and write what you're going to experience, I would have mistakenly written out all of the trials and tribulations, all the losses in my life, all of them. Wouldn't have left one in there. I want to just live a charmed life, right? And maybe I would have resulted in an ignorance is bliss formula. That's possible. But in the end, I don't think I would ever have made deep thoughts. Not for another 20 years at a minimum. It's all these hardships and all these things, all these moments that I picked myself back up off the ground and then started kind of looking at the world and going, why is it this way? Isn't there a better way to do this? Or, wow, I could have done that a lot easier. Let's make a video about keeping everyone else out of the shit show, right? So I mentioned that example because if you are in a tough situation in life, but you love it, but you're just kind of like, God damn it, I got to pay the bills. I got to figure out how to pay for my family and all that kind of stuff, or whatever. You're in a tough situation. I want you to embrace it. Embrace it if you can. And watch Twilight Zones, would you? Because they handle this theme beautifully in a couple of them. Willoughby is one of the episodes. And what's weird is I am actually a Willoughby. 2 families up. The surname is Willoughby on my mom's side. So I think that's sort of maybe part 1. We won't call it part 1, but I think that's just a good overview of some of the basics of how we are manipulated away. Don't let marketing departments tell you how to grow up. Please, dear God. Anything in life, okay, that has been deemed by society to be a risk of addiction, alcohol, drugs, gambling, sex, be extremely careful with those things. And do not think that somehow you have the magic formula and everyone else doesn't have the magic formula. When you get around rockers, now most of you can just read books and you'll get the same exact education. But once you get around the rockers who have been out there and have just embraced drugs on a level that few of us ever have, and you start to hear, oh, you used to have another band member, but he died of AIDS because he caught it from heroin intravenous drug use because he used to know another band member in another band. Or people kill themselves in bands because they use drugs to survive the hardship, creating an artificial cushion. And once the drugs no longer can do what they do because the brain is rejecting its dopamine positive spin, they commit suicide, right? Happens to actors, happens to singers, happens to a lot of people. normal people like us, right? There are plenty of challenges in life, and we're told that nothing should hurt in this world anymore. We're told that a fair society is a society where everyone lives in utter utopia. Now, I hope at some point we do reach Gene Roddenberry's world. That's why I made a Star Trek episode. But a lot of us, realize that there needs to be some sort of consciousness revolution in this planet. And I just think that this sort of episode, this sort of topic is the only way that we're going to fortify the bottom of the foundation of a better world. And instead of being a pyramid with people at the top and the parameridian stone telling us what to do, which is going to be very difficult to change the paradigm of how we think about things like that, we need silos. The world should never be organized in a pyramid. Quite frankly, there never should be a centralized government in the world, to be honest. It's a convenient mechanism in our brains to say we don't have to own our world, right? I gave it to my senator, my congressman, my president. I gave it to a corporation, for Christ's sake. We got to get out of that thinking. And the only way we're going to do it is to grow up and own the silo of all the responsibilities in our life, right? And the silo is merely everything that you need to do to survive stacked up on each other in cylinder pieces, right? And some of your silos will be much taller than someone else's because they're living a more simplified life. You may find out that when you're 18 to, say, 28, your silo is really, really tall because you're going after everything you possibly can when you're young, which is what you should do. Before you get the spouse, before you get the children, you should go after everything you possibly can. But now if you did go for your kids, you might experience that your 30s has a higher silo because your kids are now going into schools every single day and you don't have to, wipe their butts anymore and feed them every single split second of the day and counsel them every single split second of the day. Eventually they're going to grow up and leave in your 40s and they're going to go off and take mommy and daddy's genes and become amazing people, right? So whenever you get your freedom, whether you take advantage of it early in your life or later in your life, your set of challenges is going to stack up a little higher. It's okay. When you get older, if you've already done it, I can definitely tell you from all my friends, the silos sort of average out between high and low, and we just grind and grind and grind, right? So I hope this is helpful. This show's charter, as I say every once in a while, is really to increase the communication about things like this so that we can compare notes. There is no Facebook group about growing up, right? And because it's a global situation online, it's not a really healthy step at this point. If we could get, say, a small township to hive mind up a really good way to live, and another township does, and then maybe we can bring together a city, and the city is hive mind in a really good way to take advantage of a lot of these things we're talking about on this show. And it goes up to a state level, goes up to maybe a continent level. Forget nations, right? And then our continent, in North America, gels with South America. Then we get Europe and Africa and Eurasia all connected together. That's going to be probably the organic growth pattern if we could ever get this right. But we need to understand that there are marketing agencies and companies that tell us, look away, be different in a completely violent trajectory change than the person next to you. Oh, by the way, feel bad about yourself. Isn't it amazing how marketing companies will make you feel inferior because you don't have a product in your house? What does that do to your psyche? What does that do to your self-image? It's not healthy. So we need to figure out what works for us, because what works for me is not going to work for you necessarily, right? But I do believe that there's probably some common threads, and I think that overall, based on your silos design and all the requirements that you've put on yourself to exist, and make sure that you have a differentiation between your requirements to live and your wish list to be happy. And your requirements to live can fluctuate as well. But the idea is, if you have your list of things that would make you happy at 25, I would be utterly shocked if that list would remotely look the same at 35, 45, 55, etc. So understand that your silo should be reevaluated if you find yourself dissatisfied. And it might be that the goal that you've put in your silo is really sort of based on a marketing department. It's based on your buddy next to you or your spouse that brought this thing in, not intentionally, but brought it in inadvertently, and they stacked it up on both your silos, and you both are going for a goal that makes no sense. It doesn't really make you happy. When you really get it, it won't make you happy. Right? Who knows? I hope you're really thrilled with life, quite frankly. I think that's it. If you made it this far, man, you are one dedicated soul. As always, I really appreciate you guys listening. I am very, very close at this exact moment of getting the new intro worked out. It seems crazy to hang on to this, but I don't want to put out a bunch of season 2 episodes with an old intro, and we got something kind of cool. Hopefully it looks good. Anyway, if you haven't been already, go to mkultraradio.com. As always, if you're coming through video, there's audio. If you're coming through audio, there's video. If you're coming through audio, you got to go to the website to get all 100 plus episodes of this thing. I do enjoy your comments because your comments are super intelligent. I'm telling you. We get 100 amazing comments for every one little troll that goes around. But for now, take care of yourself and someone else, and I will see you in the next Deep Thoughts. Over now.